Hey, it's Jael from Cell-Based Nutrition, and today we're talking about how chronic pain can slow you down, but it does not have to count you out. Those of us who live with chronic pain, chronic illness, complex medical needs, chronic fatigue, disability, would have all experienced in our lives occasions where the plans that we have been slowed down. And this is because we have had to adapt to an increase in our pain, an increase in our symptoms, a decrease in functionality, in mobility, etc. You know, it's very easy to feel like you are behind in life. You know, in school, you feel like you're behind your peers. In work, you may feel like you're behind plans that you've made. In life, you may feel that you are behind the image that you had of yourself at a particular point in your life. And I think living with chronic pain teaches you that it is important to run your own race and that adaptation to your condition is not a failure. So let me talk you a little bit through how I have experienced this fear that I am or was behind, and how I have come to the realization that there is no set timeline, and how I'm happy setting my own pace now. So I've mentioned in a previous video that my first big bout of illness came in my sixth form. It came in my first year of my A levels. I had pneumonia, which triggered a sickle cell crisis. The pneumonia spread to both lungs, so it was bilateral. And I was hospitalized for an entire half term, which is very long when you are a teenager. And because of the fast pace of the education system, you do technically miss a large chunk of education. By the time I was rehabilitated and able to return back to school, I had missed a significant amount of year 12. So I sat my AS levels, and the results that summer were disappointing for me. I crashed and burned in the vast majority of my subjects. I was doing 5 AS levels, and I flunked 2 so badly that there was absolutely no discussion about me being able to carry them through to A2. So I was only allowed to carry 3 forward. But because of the mitigating circumstances and because it was a hospitalization, etc., my parents put in the necessary paperwork for me to be able to resit my AS levels, which I did at the beginning of A2. And thankfully, I was able to get good enough grades to drag me through. And you know, despite, going into sixth form, I'm doing 5 A levels, I'm super bright, the future is gonna be great. I ended up leaving sixth form with 3 A levels, 2 Bs and a C. And although I was disappointed, although there were lots of people who would think that those are good grades, but I knew that the reason that I had those grades was because I was deathly unwell. And there was no other way that with the illness, with the time in hospital, with my condition, there was no other alternative That was just the way that the land lied. And I was very fortunate that one of my chosen universities gave me a really easy conditional offer. And those two B's and a C got me over the finish line, and I got into one of my top three universities. University wasn't easy. I asked for a lot of extensions, and even with mitigating circumstances at the time, my university was pretty harsh. I think at the time it was a 2% deduction per every day that the assignment was late. And so often, even if I wasn't hospitalized, even just in times when I was just just fatigued and in pain, I would calculate and I would say, okay, if I need a week's extension and I don't have the energy to be running backwards and forwards to the GP to get a sick note and so on, if it's a week late, 2% per every working day, 10% discount, like 10% deducted from my overall grade. And I'll be like, if I could produce an assignment that was in the 70% or 80 percentile, 10% deduction will still be a pass, I'll be fine. And that's literally, I'm not advising that this is how students living with chronic pain approach their university life. Please get the appropriate certification so you're not penalized, because don't let the frustration of seeing your GP and constantly having to ask for sick notes or fit notes as they're called now get in the way. But that's how I got through university, figuring out myself, doing the calculations of what deductions I will get if I'm not able to submit my assignments on time. Only the heavens know how I left university with a 2-1, but I'm very grateful that I did. And then after university, I decided to return to university to do my PGCE, to train to become a teacher. And again, my health got in the way, and I really struggled. I really battled during my PGCE with depression as well. So on top of the chronic pain and the chronic fatigue, I struggled with my mental health. I think I needed extensions with virtually every assignment that I had, every project that I had. I remember my final placement needing to be extended because I was so unwell. And for me, there is absolutely a pattern between education and a flare-up in my symptoms. My system, my body does not respond well to stress at all. And one thing that exams and assignments, etc., cause for me is stress. And so ever since my GCSEs, I have experienced an increase in my pain symptoms, a weakness in my immune system, more propensity to get coughs and colds and chest infections and viruses and so on and so forth. And I don't know why I continue to put myself through education when it almost became a given that I would be ill every time it was exam or assignment season. Even when I left teaching and changed careers, I really celebrate my qualifications in naturopathy and nutritional therapy, because I started a 3-year program and it took me 6 years to complete it. When I first left teaching in 2016, so this was following disability discrimination and an employment tribunal, I decided to retrain. So at first I did 3 diplomas in complementary therapy. So I did diplomas in aromatherapy, holistic massage, and reflexology. And then I went off and did a vegan chef diploma, and I started working in a restaurant doing a year's apprenticeship. I was trying to figure out how I was going to use my complementary therapy and the vegan chef stuff um, in a new career. I was trying to figure it out, and I came across nutritional therapy, and it made perfect sense. It's sort of tying everything together. And so I originally had applied to start doing my qualification in naturopathic nutritional therapy significantly um, before I returned to teaching for the second time. I completed 2 years. Yeah, I completed the first year and the second year. And then I attempted the third year, in which I just crashed and burned. There was a lot of stress happening in my personal life as well, an uptick in depression again, and I just couldn't get over the finish line. I couldn't get my portfolio in. I couldn't get um, my case studies written up, and I just felt like a failure. And I went back to teaching. I didn't know what to do at that point, and I thought it was easier going back to the familiar. You know, the way our nervous system tries to take you back to a familiar place, even though it's stressful, even though it's painful. And I did that. And I couldn't ignore the fact that I wasn't happy in my return to teaching. Although I had changed subjects and I loved teaching food preparation and nutrition at GCSE, and I loved teaching food technology at Key Stage 3, I still face disability discrimination in the schools that I taught at after my return to teaching. And there was this nagging feeling in the back of my head of, is there even a way for you to be able to resurrect my nutritional therapy qualifications? And eventually, with some help from talking therapies and having some really in-depth work with a psychologist and getting some really good support from my hematology team, and sort of really tackling the pain that had really increased dramatically. By this time, my mobility had reduced significantly. You know, I was not in a good place. And I am so grateful that I had a fantastic medical team, because my hematologist, my health psychologist, my GP, they all rallied round and wrote really compelling letters and evidence to my institution. And they allowed me to return. Now, with most institutions of further education, higher education, you usually have a time period to complete your program. So even though it's a 3-year program, it's a 3-year degree, it's a 3-year course, there is some flexibility. Some institutions say you have to complete within 4 years, some within 5 years, some within 6 years. For me, I didn't know at the time, but there was a 6-year window in which you could complete that 3-year course. And with a lot of help, with a lot of support, with a lot of extensions and mitigating circumstances, I was able to get over that finish line. And my graduation day was probably one of my proudest moments because I know what literally went into me being able to pivot. And what I wanted to say is, I say all of that, I tell you all of those stories to say that it is never too late. Let me tell you a secret. I'm in my 40s now and I have changed career. It is absolutely possible, especially for the youngsters out there. The youngsters, gosh, I'm telling my age. I'm demonstrating my age. But if you are living with chronic pain conditions, chronic illness, and you are in your teens, you are in your 20s, life has barely started. Whatever it is that you want to do, there isn't a timeline. There isn't a stopwatch on your ability to get to the destination that you want to get to. If it takes double the time for you to finish your qualification, then that is the timeline that you are on. I don't see it as a loss for me that it took me 6 years as opposed to 3 years. Yes, everybody in my cohort that started with me graduated 3 years before I did and were able to move on with their career and so on and so forth. That wasn't the timeline that was meant for me. I have to accept the limitations that my body places on the little timelines that I have in my head. And I have to accept that it is okay that my body can't always do what I want it to do when I want it to do it. I also have come to the realization that if I put in the support strategies, if I ask for help, then I have a much better chance of being able to achieve the things that I want to achieve. Resilience is necessary when your capacity has a limit. We have to realize that the race, if we want to use that terminology, that we're running is a marathon and not a sprint. And if possible, to utilize the fact that we have the Equality Act in the UK, which means that institutions, schools, colleges, universities, workplaces, etc., have to make reasonable adjustments for those of us living with complex health needs and disability. And I don't say that flippantly, because despite the Equality Act being in place since 2010 in the UK, I have experienced disability discrimination at every single school that I have taught in. And I know for a fact that there are people who are watching this video who have and are currently experiencing disability discrimination at their job, despite the fact that we have laws in place to protect us. So I am not saying at the click of a finger we can invoke the Equality Act and everybody behaves themselves and stops being ableist and puts in the support. I know it's not that easy. I know it's not that easy, and I know that getting the support that you need comes with an arduous fight, and it's unfair. But it is also important for us to know our own limits and to move at our own pace, and where we can to get support to help us get to where it is we are trying to get to. Today is day 27 of me uploading consistent videos, daily videos, I never thought that I would be able to escape teaching. I always felt like I was trapped because it's all I've known, right? It's my at the time was my highest level of education, and it was everything that I had trained to be. And some 20 years after starting teaching, I'm starting a new career. So it's not too late. If I can do it, then there is absolutely possibility for you to be able to pivot and maneuver. Now, of course, it takes a lot of time. You know, I left teaching in 2021, it's now 2026, and I'm only at the start of my new career. So I am not going to sit here and play in your face and gaslight you and tell you that pivoting is easy. It's not. It's taken me an incredibly long period of time to, one, be able to get my body into a place where it can sustain this daily pressure. And I'm not saying that it's pressure in a bad way of me putting out content on a daily basis. But there are times when I wake up and I am in pain. There are times that I wake up and I am exhausted. And that pain and that exhaustion doesn't go away at 9 a.m., doesn't go away at midday, doesn't go away at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There are days when I am in bed and the clock is ticking and I think to myself, maybe I'm not going to be able to get a video out today, and then somehow I get a gust of energy and I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's knock out a video, even if it's 45 seconds. And some of the videos that I have put out recently have been less than a minute long. But I wanted to do these longer form YouTube videos so I can sort of talk in more nuance about the topics that I discuss in my shorter videos. And I have learnt to have grace for myself and my capabilities. You know, I told myself that as long as I am posting at least once a day, it doesn't matter the time of day that the video comes out. The video comes out at 11 p.m. It is still a success because I have posted within that 24-hour period, like I said I was going to. I make my own rules now. And that is one of the things that I would love you to take from this. You have the right to make up your own rules based on your own capacity and your own capability. You shouldn't feel as if you are behind, because you cannot be behind in a race that is yours. You cannot be behind if you are setting your own pace. You cannot be behind if you are creating the rules. And if you have some things that you have in motion, and then you have a flare-up, a crisis, whatever it's called in your condition, whatever an increase in the symptoms that you experience is called in the condition that you have, you can pause the clock and you can start it again when you're ready. You know, there are very few things that have a finite limit that you must complete them by. if we look for the flexibility, we can often find it. Our worth is not measured by speed. Our worth is about who we are, your moral compass, your character, your sense of humor, your personality. Whether you are a good person, those things determine your worth, not what you have achieved and the timeline that you've achieved them by. And I think it's really important for us to know this and for us to understand this and to give ourselves grace. If this idea of living at your own pace resonates, you know that you don't have to figure it out on your own. I am currently preparing a small group program for people living with chronic pain, and it's called the Pain and Fatigue Liberation Method. And this brings together all of my education in terms of complementary therapy, naturopathy, nutritional therapy, and of course my ability to teach. And it's designed for people living with chronic pain and fatigue, to teach you how to understand your nervous system, to rebuild trust in your body, and to learn how to live with less pressure and less fear. It gives you complementary therapy, alternative medicine, naturopathic approaches to dealing with pain from different angles, looking at all of the systems of the body, working in tandem with the allopathic traditional medical routes. You know, it doesn't, what I teach isn't going to clash with what your doctors and your consultants want for you in terms of their treatment of your condition. This is a collaborative approach that will help give you some extra support from somebody who has lived experience. There is no rushing with me, and there is no bypassing and pretending that the things that we experience and feel as a result of our conditions don't exist. I always make sure that we give space and have the language and have the time to be able to explore the very real difficulties of living with chronic illness. And we do that in a very grounded and nuanced way, whilst having evidence-based and science-backed techniques to help mitigate pain and fatigue. So when I get all of that together, details will appear, and I am looking forward to working with those who want to work with me. So I'm Jael from Cell-Based Nutrition. As always, it has been lovely talking to you. Please like, comment and subscribe. It helps to boost the video to a new audience so we can grow here, so we can meet and support other people who are living with chronic pain, chronic fatigue, chronic illness, complex health conditions and disability. And so we can have a space for us and by us where we can speak freely about the things that are on our mind. I want you to remember that your body is not broken. Your cells are just undernourished. And I will see you in the next video.